Welcome to the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast. My name is Leah Barbieri. I'm your host, and today I'm excited to introduce Kristin Burton. She is a critical care PA and also the founder of Strive Coaching, which is a company devoted to financial literacy for the medical professionals. So welcome, Kristin.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I've actually been following you for a while, and I belong to a subscription thing on Instagram too. So I love getting your posts, and I think it's so important what you're doing there. And we'll talk about that a little later in the podcast. But first, I'd like to start with just why medicine? Why did you get into this field? Was there a specific story, or did you just kind of find yourself here?
Yeah, so it's funny. No one in my family had been in medicine. My parents are actually both entrepreneurs and they were like always working at home. And so I told myself, like, I would like to get a normal job where I go to work, leave work at work, and go home. And societally, medicine sounded like a good profession. You know, it's like people spoke highly of people that worked in medicine. It sounded like a good income. And I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. And so all of those things kind of pointed me towards I want to be a medical person. It took me a while to decide between like medical school, dental school, optometry school, PA school, all of those things. But I don't have a really good reason of how I arrived there outside of like, this sounds good. And, you know, Aunt Sally or whatever, the neighbors think that people who work in medicine have good jobs. So I'll try that.
Makes sense. I mean, I think it's what's the word? I guess like it's a sure thing kind of, you know, and I think hopefully will always be in demand. So yeah, I think it's a great, obviously I'm in healthcare, so I think it's a great career.
Yeah.
And were you always in critical care, or did you start in a different field?
No, I actually started in hospitalist medicine and then pretty quickly transitioned to cardiology, which was about, I would say like 75-80% inpatient with a little bit of outpatient work as well. And then I've been in critical care for the last 5 years.
Okay. And so critical care, I guess, you know, a lot of us know probably what that means. But for people who might be listening who are like in high school or have no idea about the healthcare field, tell us what critical care means.
So technically, my job is pulmonary and critical care medicine, but I work night shift. And so essentially what I do is cross cover 3 ICUs and do all new admissions for our service to the hospital. So most of those are critical care admissions and then go to rapid responses. So when you think of it in terms of like if you're new from to medicine in general, it's basically patients who are already in the hospital who are not doing well, or patients who need to be admitted to the hospital with the highest level of care due to the severity of their illness.
Okay, perfect. So you work overnight?
I do, yeah.
Wow. How long have you been doing that for?
5 years.
Wow. Are you like a night person?
No, hardly. No, I'm a strict morning person, and I have like all of my routines, and being on night shift is very honestly tricky for me. But I like the work. I'm going to work after this, thus the attire.
Wow. Yeah. Good for you. That's amazing. I don't know how you're doing it for so long, but we need people like you to do these shifts. I don't think I've interviewed anyone who works nights, so this is interesting. I think it's really important, I think, to talk about shift work because I don't know, are we still calling it shift work? Is that like an old term? But like night shifts, you know? So, well, let's go back first real quick. If you want to talk about where you went to PA school, you can. If not, that's cool. But tell us about your application process. What made you decide on PA instead of nursing, nurse practitioner, doctor, etc.?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to sound like a not intentional person, which actually is not true about me at all. But the way I chose PA specifically was so flawed. The same way I chose medicine. You know, these aren't the way you should choose anything in life, but this is what I did. My undergraduate college counselor told me, hey, if you want to be in medicine, the average PA works 40 hours a week and the average physician works 65. And based on that one sentence, I decided to become a PA. Which is so just dumb. It's not even true, right? Like I've talked to PAs that work 8 hours a week and some that work 30. Same is true for physicians. And so it's like, man, that made no sense. But we all, you know, we end up where we end up and here I am. So I decided about that time frame that I wanted to go to PA school. And I was in a long-term relationship with my now husband, and we really wanted to be by family. So I narrowed my search to PA programs in the Indianapolis area. And for me at the time, this is a decade ago, Butler really stood out as the school that had been around the longest and had really strong network, a network of preceptors and things like that. So for me, it was like, I have to go to Butler University. And that is what I ended up doing. I went to Butler for grad school, had a great experience, spent a lot of money. It's a private school, but had a great experience, and came out the other side.
Awesome. So you liked Butler.
Mhm.
Where exactly is Butler?
It's in Indianapolis.
It is in Indianapolis. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I know I've heard of it. I just have like such little experience with the Midwest. So sorry
Oh,
about
I don't blame you. We're not the coolest parts of the country. We get it.
that. No, I mean, there's some cool things there.
You're right.
And I mean, Indianapolis, I feel like is a kind of a medical hub.
Yeah, we do have a lot of like large hospital systems and
Yeah.
honestly, a lot of job opportunity.
Really? Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So I don't always, but sometimes we delve into like the cost of PA school and how people paid for it. And I feel like this, if I'm going to ask anybody this, it should be a question for you because you're the money person. So can you explain how maybe you got a scholarship, maybe you paid for it on your own? Like, how did you find the cost of PA school? And do you think the cost of PA school is worth becoming a PA?
Ooh, those are good questions. Well, first I'll tell my own cost. I was fortunate in that I didn't have any debt from undergrad. That was a combination of scholarships, going to a like smaller commuter college, and
Mm-hmm.
parental help. I made it out of that with zero debt, and then borrowed everything for PA school on my own to pay for it myself. I didn't
Okay.
have any money really, so it was 100% basically student loan debt. For me, it was a combination of federal and private, but when it was all done, it was $161,000 the day I
Yeah.
went and actually added it up after graduation,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't that much above national averages for PAs, but for somebody who, is new to money, like has never really had a lot of debt, it felt like the end of the world to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it feels like the end of the world for a lot of new PAs still, because it's, honestly, it sounds like an insurmountable amount of money. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you quickly, I ended up paying mine off really quickly, which I almost never suggest really to other folks. But I worked a ton of extra hours, got a bunch of per diem work or part-time work on top of the day job,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up, my husband and I lived off of about $40,000 a year, and I paid it off in 16 months. So it's not
Wow.
insurmountable. We surmounted it, but it was a lot of money. Now for like the is it worth it part, I think that the cost of PA school can range pretty dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can achieve a debt to income ratio close to one, meaning the total amount that you're going to owe in student loan debt when you're done compared to your annual income is a ratio of about one, then you can pretty easily justify the cost. You
Right.
get this automatic six-figure income essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and have pretty good job opportunity, really, and an in-demand career, like you said. The people that end up, I think, feeling like, man, this was not worth it and I shouldn't have done it, are the people that went to really expensive programs, come out owing 350,000, earning 110,000, and that's when you're looking at the cash output going, "Man, this sucks." Now you can get out of it with things like public service loan forgiveness and, National Health Service Corps loan forgiveness program. There are strategies, but it is gonna limit your job search because you have to have qualifying employers for these things, and so you have to be willing to jump through hoops if that's the situation that you're in.
Right. Right. That's a great answer. I did do public service loan forgiveness. So I like to say I got lucky there because
Mhm.
I do think it was kind of a big chance that I took, especially when I started. I mean, people were getting denied left and right as soon as this program came out. But yeah, I think I agree with you on the 1-to-1 ratio thing. It makes total sense. And if you can find a loan forgiveness program, I highly recommend it because I, I got, I mean, yes, I got lucky, but like I am debt free. So, or
Awesome.
you can do it like you did and just pay it off in a year and a half.
Yeah,
It's just pretty
right?
crazy,
What
but
year were your
amazing.
loans forgiven? Do you mind me asking?
Last year.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the amount of people that have been approved and had successful forgiveness has really ramped up over the last few years.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you would have asked me even like 5 to 7 years ago, I would have said, and it's kinda
Even like
nerve
3 years ago.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But it has very much become a viable strategy
Yeah.
if you're willing to, not take the private practice dermatology job.
Yeah, exactly. I always tell people to you like make sure it's worth it. Like do the math. If you can
Yeah,
pay off, if you only have like $30,000 in debt of debt, I don't really think it's worth it. But if you came out of school with 260 like me,
yeah.
it's probably
Mhm.
worth it if you're ready to work in a hospital or a qualifying employer. Yeah. But we're getting off on a tangent. I do want to talk about your business. But first, I just want to jump back. I think what a lot of people want to know is how we got into PA school and the different things we did for patient care hours and just kind of like set us apart from the rest of the applicants. So, is there one or two things that you would say what you would tell people to do before PA school to kind of give them a better chance of getting into such a competitive school these days?
Sure. Um, Whether or not we like it, GPA matters a lot. So a lot of
Mm.
emphasis there. My patient care hours came from being a CNA in a memory care unit, which
Oh,
on a personal level I enjoyed, but I think on a practical level, being a scribe in the emergency department gives you better experience and better exposure than what I did, to be honest.
okay.
And honestly, in terms of standing out, the soft skills actually matter quite a bit more. I've gone back and done interviews for Butler, and the things that really stand out for me are communication skills, professionalism, even as subtle as the way that you carry yourself. Like
Yeah.
coming into an interview with chipped fingernail polish, um, the tone in your voice when talking to another interview candidate on a group assignment, which is common in the interview process now. Those subtleties, having the soft skills mastered, I think honestly carry you a lot further once you get past the interview phase than the metrics that you have on paper.
I see that so much. I mean, for me, it's so much about personality because like the skills can be taught, you know? So, but yeah, I agree. And I think it's so important to be authentic, but also like be professional. Don't show up to the interview unprepared and just I don't know. I guess have your ethics questions under control. You know what I mean? I think for me, like if I were interviewing and asking specific medical questions, I would care more about if it was an ethics question, that answer over anything else. But yeah, I agree with you 100% there. So your patient care hours were, you said, at a memory center?
It was an assisted living for specific patients that had memory care needs. So most of them had Alzheimer's, dementia, or something
Okay,
similar to that.
interesting. And you liked that?
Yeah, I had a grandpa with early onset Alzheimer's that
Mm.
we cared for. My family collectively cared for really throughout most of my childhood. And so I think for that reason, I've always been drawn to that patient population. I've always had a lot of empathy for that. And so I enjoyed that work. But in terms of like, okay, what, really helped me from a clinical standpoint, it wasn't necessarily that.
Right. Yeah. I think scribing is such a great skill to have too, especially when you then get into your interview process and you're interviewing for jobs and having that knowing the EMR, especially if it's the same EMR that you're going to be
Yep.
interviewing for, like step ahead already. Like
Yep.
nobody wants to have to train somebody on the EMR. So,
Right.
yeah, go be a scribe.
It's true.
So you kind of already talked about critical care, but I want to know what specifically brought you to critical care. Like, what do you like about it so much?
I think what I like about medicine most is like complex medical decision making, and I love the hospital. And so that is really what critical care is. And I think that plus the procedural competencies are what made me really push towards it. I honestly love the medicine of cardiology. And when I did cardiology, I did a variety of things. I did some interventional cardiology, some congestive heart failure, but a lot of what I did was with our structural heart team and valvular heart disease. which honestly is probably my favorite part of all of medicine still to this day. But I felt like I liked the bigger picture, and I like to have to see the whole, all systems, I guess, cohesively as one. And so that kind of drew me out of the cardiology world back into something that was a little bit broader based. That plus the where I work, the APPs were trained to do central lines, arterial lines, chest tubes, thoras, paras, intubations, and they ran codes. And I wanted to be able to have that skill set. And so that more than anything is what pushed me out of cardiology. In some places, the APPs do procedures and cardiology practices, but that was not the case where I worked. And so I wanted to just gain that skill set and grow my own clinical base. And that's what ultimately led me there.
Cool. So you like the hands-on stuff a little
Mhm.
bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Well, it's really amazing what you do. I feel like since I've been in ortho for so long, I've just lost so much of my like medical knowledge. So when I talk to people in critical care or cardiology or neurology, I'm just so amazed by you guys. So
Oh,
thanks for everything you
hey,
do.
it's like somebody's gotta do your job too. I would be woefully inadequate
True.
at it, we all have our
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sure you'd be great. Ortho's easy. So, night shift. I'm stuck on this because the fact that I don't think I've known
Mhm.
anybody to stick with night shift for longer than maybe like 2 years or so. So,
Yeah.
tell me how it like fits into your life. Why I know you said you're a morning person and you're not a night person, but why do you like it? I mean, obviously you've stuck with it. So there's got to be some reasons why you like this schedule.
Yeah, there are the reasons. There's probably 3 core ones.
Okay.
One is scope of practice. That
Mhm.
is, to be frank, I think the worst part about being a PA is the massive scope of practice variability that exists depending on where you work and what time you work. And our scope of
Yeah.
practice is biggest at night, and I like that, so I work at night. Okay, so that's part of it. The other
That's a
part of
great
it,
answer.
well, like, this is the real truth.
It's
Uh,
true.
the other part of it is you obviously get paid more at night. There's usually
Mhm.
some type of, differential for that, so the extra compensation's nice. And my shifts are clumped together. So I'll work 7 12-hour night shifts in a row, but then I'll have 2 weeks off. And so the 2 weeks off allows me to spend a lot of time with my daughter, who is 2, and still be able to practice medicine in the way that I like. And so despite all of the rampant health benefits or health risks that come, with working night shift, I continue to do it, and I try to do it in the healthiest way that I can, because of those other little benefits that honestly make a big difference for me.
Well, I think that having 2 weeks off would also be worth it for me.
Yeah,
I think I could force myself to stay up overnight to have 2 weeks off.
yeah.
Do you get to travel a lot as well?
We do. We love to travel. That's probably our family's, like, favorite pastime, my husband and, my daughter and I. Honestly, she's 2, and she's already been on, like, multiple international trips, dozens of flights.
Amazing.
Yeah, and the time off allows for that. It also allows me to do my
Cool.
business, which gives me,
Right?
like, an extra sense of purpose and passion as well.
So let's get into that. Your business. When did you start it and why? Like what got you into this whole financial thing?
Um, Really, the beginning of me wanting to do this just came out of my own difficulties, my own stress about my student loans, and then even once that was done, realizing like, hey, being debt free doesn't really get you that far. Like, I'm not wealthy, I don't have control over my time, I don't have any assets, and having to learn all that for myself, I just realized there are a lot of other people exactly like me in the exact same position who wanted the same things and also didn't know how to do it. And so I started this in 2019 and really have it's changed a lot and what we do and how we do it over time, but the core has always been the same. Like, how do we teach more people how to do money well so that you can stop feeling like I'm a slave to this job? Doesn't matter if I'm burnt out, I'm stuck.
That makes total sense. I think you're right. Many of us, maybe the majority of us in medicine don't really understand money because we were never taught it and or we never like, you don't have to take a business class in PA school or undergrad. So,
Right.
it's kind of amazing how we come out with such little knowledge on this subject and
Yep.
especially physicians. because they're often running their own practices and they have no business background. And it's like, I'm pretty sure like some sort of finance business class should be worked into this. But I'm so grateful for what you're doing because it really, there's definitely a gap in the education there. And I think you are filling that gap. And I really enjoy your posts. And I think you have a lot of good things to say. And are you mainly on Instagram?
I would say probably the main social media platform I use is Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel and some other things, but honestly, most of what I like to do is communicate with people on our email list, inside of our community, and inside of our coaching program. I'm honestly not, even though I'm on social media, I'm not a huge fan of social media.
Yeah.
So
I get it. I get it. It's like it's a love-hate relationship for me. But tell our listeners how like did you start this coaching business? Did you just kind of start giving advice to people or
Mhm.
how did this come about?
It actually started so small. It started with working with PAs, NPs, nurses that I knew, like from the hospital where I worked that said, "Hey, how did you do that?" And starting on a very small basis. I didn't even have a website. I didn't have social media. I didn't have anything. And then actually, I had started a social media and done a couple of things. And someone said, like, "Hey, you could reach a lot more people if you like lean into that." And so I did. But it started on a really just personal basis.
Cool. And so it was kind of just organic. I like that.
Mhm.
What do you like about it so much? Like what do you get out of your coaching business?
Honestly, everything. Like the thing is people's lives will really genuinely be different. And I get to see that the most and the people that do our actual coaching program because I'm talking to them all the time. But like people will come in and go from having really like no semblance of organization with money, feeling incredibly overwhelmed, like working super hard, but just getting nowhere. And then by the end, they are like, okay, I understand this stuff. All my investing systems are automated. I have to work 10 years less than I thought. And now, like, me and my spouse are on the same page and we're crushing it. And so, like, to have those kind of one-on-one conversations, it honestly gives you a lot more personal, like, fulfillment, or at least for me, than like working in an ICU. Not to be bad, but like, a lot of people die. That's just statistics. And so you don't get
Yeah.
like a lot of rewarding moments in the
Right.
ICU. And so having
Right.
those from my business of being like, wow, these people's lives are genuinely better. That's huge for me.
What would if somebody were to sign up for Strive coaching, what would they get from that? Is it like one-on-one sessions with you or what is it?
So it's a 90-day program. It's myself and I have another coach in there as well that specializes in actually specifically federal student loans. And we do basically all sorts of stuff to say, hey, look, here's how you can go from where you are to financially independent at the age you want. And we'll map out all of that for them, but then we'll actually help them step by step as they're like going to implement it. We're looking at their budget every single month. We're bringing in guest industry experts to give them, additional icing on the cake of like, what does it look like to invest in real estate? How does tax strategy actually work for a medical professional? What does asset protection look like? All the kind of higher level stuff. And so it's a combination of education and then implementation so that you don't end up being one of those people who has a lot of good ideas about what they should do with money who never actually puts any of them in play.
I feel like that's me.
That's a lot of folks.
Well, okay, that's not totally true, but I feel like I have all these ideas and like and then usually my boyfriend talks me out of it. But I could have used you like after I graduated and started and decided to, get my own apartment that I couldn't afford when I was still in all this debt. Yeah. So I if anybody's looking for this, I highly recommend you work with Kristin because I've made some big mistakes and wasted a lot of money just because I didn't have this knowledge. So
Yeah, me too.
I think it's great what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, let's get to one of my favorite questions. So we talked about what you love about your job, what you like about being a PA. Tell me something that you don't love about being a PA.
One piece of it is the scope of practice variability, which I kind of mentioned already. The other
Yeah.
thing is it can be sometimes hard to get in a position from a big picture standpoint for your practice where your opinion can change something. Whether that be like, hey, this is a physician run practice. We have a leadership committee that decides your day-to-day job, but you're not allowed to be on it because it's physicians only. Whether it's our hospital has a physician leadership committee that makes decisions about all the APPs, but we're not going to have any APP leadership in the room. Those things still happen a lot. And so you do end up getting in a spot where you feel like you're fighting for your voice to be heard and to be able to make a change from a bigger level. And I think that can be frustrating.
Yeah, it definitely can be. I'm lucky enough to have a boss who does very much value me and my co-PA's opinions, but in the end, it's like when it comes to administration, it's like non-existent. I mean, our hospital is pretty PA forward, so I will say there's usually our chief PA involved in some decision-making processes, but I totally know what you mean. And I think if you're going to become a PA, I think it's just something you're going to have to learn how to navigate. But there is so much variability, not just in scope of practice, but like in the attitudes towards PAs, if that makes sense. Like there are physicians out there who really value PAs and you're a part of the team, right?
Yeah.
Then there's physicians out there who just want a personal assistant. So I think it's very important when you're interviewing to kind of like try to get an idea. Like I tell people, don't be afraid of like asking the right questions to understand what your actual role will be. It's hard sometimes, but
for sure. That's like the hardest part. I think by asking hard questions, being very attentive to little nuances, like if they on paperwork, if it says physician's assistant apostrophe S, like you already know you're out. If they are still using like old terminology, like, hey, this is your supervising physician versus collaborating physician, like things like that, you can tell pretty quickly, is this a place that values APP scope of practice or not? And then I think the key is to actually spend a day, not with the physician, but with the APP doing the job that you're going to do. And actually see, like, what do they do? How do people talk to them? Do they make medical decisions, or are they really in a more like a documenting type of role? Like, you can find that out very quickly with just a day or two of shadowing and save yourself a whole lot of headache of signing up for a job, onboarding, learning the job, and then 6 months in going, man, this sucks. I want a new one.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. The whole shadowing thing. And I think most people are open to that these days, and just spending like a half a day in the office is really all you need, I think, and paying attention to how people interact.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would do differently in your path to becoming a PA?
I gotta say no. I don't think that's like a helpful viewpoint in life in general. I've had obviously some ups, I've had some downs, but I think all of them ended up being really strong learning experiences, and I'm a better person and a better PA because they happened. And I also think that by having negative experiences as a PA, you can help guide other people coming up in the profession on how to avoid it and what to do when it happens. So I would say no redos, just kind of learning as I go and always trying to make the best of everything.
Love it. Great. Any specific one piece of advice you can give to, let's say, somebody who's currently applying to or thinking about applying to PA school?
Ooh, applying to PA school. It's going to challenge you. It's going to challenge you in most ways. But I think if you can come into any PA program with the mindset, like let's say you're accepted or you're going to PA school, you're about to start. If you can come in with the mindset of every single thing that I'm doing now is creating the big picture of me being an outstanding clinician, and see past all of the pressures of the day-to-day, of the exams, of the grades, you can end up positioning yourself where you're learning in a way that's going to be effective for practice, and it helps you kind of get out from the overwhelm as you do it. It reminds me of like there's a story, I think it's a fable of like a boss asking people like at this job site, like, what are you doing? And one person says, like, I'm laying bricks. And the next person says, I'm building a cathedral. And the person who views their job from like that viewpoint, from the big picture, is happier and more successful. And so I think if you go in like that way, saying big picture, my goal is to take excellent care of patients and be outstanding at my job in clinical practice, I think you come out better, but also it really helps the process of going through a program. I mean, obviously, it can be so stressful when you're actually in the program itself.
Yeah. Kristin coming at us with the fables. I love it. I love it though. It's so true. And I think some people are so focused on like, oh, I got to get these good grades and I have to get this many hours and I have to do this much research or whatever it is. But I think you're right. Like it really comes across to other people when you really care about what you're doing, what you're researching, what you're doing for your hours. And like, that's such a great piece of advice. I think a lot of people give concrete pieces of advice, but I like this because it's more of a mental aspect of it, like the whole big picture. And I think, just going into it for the right reasons is always a good idea.
Yes. That's me in a nutshell. I feel like tactics and strategies get you nowhere with the wrong mindset. So if you ask me a question, what's most important, I'm always going to give a mindset answer.
We love mindset over here. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about involving, your career, your business, anything you think people should know about you, and then let us know how they can find you, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to at least look into your business. And if you're getting out of PA school, if you're just getting out of PA school, I'm going to stress this again, like go follow Kristin. It's Strive with Kristin, right?
Yes, it is Strive with Kristin
on social media, because I find it very helpful. But yeah, anything else you want to add or talk about?
I would say especially if you're someone who's in a program or newly coming out of a program, remember that having like knowledge on the topic of money is power, of course. And it's the thing that's going to allow you to basically be the best clinician, because if you're working because you want to and not because you have to for the next dollar, it changes your approach to work. So having the knowledge is huge, but remember also, knowledge without implementation is totally useless. And so as you're going out and you're figuring out, okay, how do student loans work? What should I be looking at? Should I be doing public service loan forgiveness? Should I be doing taxable loan forgiveness? Should I be investing as I handle my loans? All of those kind of questions. Getting the inputs matters only a little bit. You have to actually do the outputs. And so get in a system, get the knowledge, but then get in a system where you're actually taking steps forward. Especially if you're like a brand new grad, we actually have a community. It's not our coaching program, but we have a community where people can come in and just like get education, go to live Q&As every single week, have all of our spreadsheets of how we actually recommend that you start tracking money so that you can like get your path forward, get your step-by-step. And that's actually just $47 to join. So that's like very, very kind of no-brainer go, hey, I'm going to get in here and get like a strong framework forward and be surrounded by people that are actually doing it. We have people in that community that have been in practice for 10 years, have a net worth of $1 million, multiple investment properties. We have people that are like, hey, I literally haven't gotten my first paycheck yet, but I'm at work and like everything in between. So plug yourself in and like actually start taking action. Otherwise, trust me, you'll be one of the people I talk to that's like, hey, I've been in practice 7 years. I don't have very much to show for it.
Yeah. I highly recommend it. I think it took me too long to make those decisions. So if I had something like this 10 years ago, it would have been so great. So go follow Strive with Kristin. And what's your website? Where can people find your website?
The website is also www.strivewithkristin.com. Keep it simple.
I love it. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I know you have to go to work, which is so crazy to me right now, but thank you for doing this. And it was really nice to meet you. And I think our viewers and listeners are going to get a lot out of this episode. This is, again, the So You Want to Work in Healthcare podcast. Today's guest was Kristin Burton. You can find her at Strive with Kristin on social media. And if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And if you leave a review on any of the podcast platforms, I'll shout you out on our next episode. Thanks again, and can't wait to see you guys in 2 weeks.